The guidelines issued by the World Commission on Dams (WCD) and those of the Japan Bank for International Cooperation (JBIC) also state that sufficient consultations with stakeholders must be conducted by disclosing all available information from early stages of planning and development. Information was severely lacking throughout the whole process. According to the EMP, the majority of the Temuan respondents, 89.2%, list the headman or batin as their only source of information on the proposed project. But the batin has remained in the dark about the project and their fate. So how could it be claimed that the Temuan community have been kept informed of the project and its consequences for them? In fact, for all stakeholders' meetings and discussions, the batin was the only person fetched to these meetings. For some meetings, no orang asli attended at all. And the batin has consistently maintained, from the year 2000 until today, that he was forced into agreeing to the resettlement, and that his consent was not freely given.
Dia orang cakap tak pindah itu kan, tu batin pasal kau pindah juga. Kalau tak pindah pun pasal pindah. Tapi dia pasal juga pindah.
Perhaps realizing that Batin's qualified consent was not good enough for satisfying these guidelines, the authorities decided to get signed statements from the mainly illiterate Temuan orang asli. But this was done in late 2006, 7 years after the project was approved by the Pahang Chief Minister, and long after the EIA and EMP were prepared. The authorities now claim that several of the community members signed the consent form, but none of them knew what they signed, nor were any of them given a copy of the document. On the contrary, some of them have since signed statutory declarations revoking their earlier consent and are now party to the civil suit to stop the dam. JBIC officials were keen to ensure that their guidelines were adhered to, especially the requirement on consultation with those directly affected by the project and the need for their consent. But it was apparent that JBIC preferred to listen to the project proponents rather than make informed independent assessments of their own. JBIC officials also seemed to be more concerned about the number of the meetings the project proponents had with the community rather than the content of the discussions at these meetings. There is no wonder then that JBIC tended to fall for the consultation equals consensus argument and has maintained it despite the evidence to the contrary. For example, at one stakeholders meeting hosted by the Economic Planning Unit of the Prime Minister's Department, the Temuan headman said that he had agreed to the resettlement because he was forced, paksa, by government officers to accept the project. If he had a choice, he would prefer to stay in his present place. However, the batin's comments were translated for the sake of the Japanese officials from JBIC as, "The orang asli are very anxious to move to the resettlement site." The JBIC office in Kuala Lumpur had also assured us that, according to the government of Malaysia, the orang asli houses of Kampung Temir will not be inundated and the people can choose either to stay or to move from the current village to a new settlement in Sungai Bilut. This guarantee has not been honoured. Not only were the orang asli not given a choice as to their unnecessary resettlement, they were also misrepresented by the authorities, and JBIC is aware of all these. When asked if they were willing to be resettled for the dam, the Chewong were unanimous in their decision.
Tak setuju. Tak mau pindah. Tak mau. Tak setuju.
Yes.
Tak pindah.
Yes.
However, with JBIC officers present, and in the absence of any Chewong representative, the Technical Committee for Resettlement was told by the Department of Orang Asli Affairs that the Chewong were included in the resettlement because it was a good development package for them.
Dr. Pengerusi, memang kita ambil kira orang Chewong ni sebab kita melihat pakej perpindahan yang terbaik.
When challenged that the Chewong would never consent to the resettlement, the representative from the Department of Orang Asli Affairs claimed otherwise.
Dan kita bincang dengan dia, yang sanggup nak bersama lah.
When further challenged that this cannot be true, the chairman of the meeting asserted,
Keputusan kerajaan ni kita tak boleh pindah-pindah dalam mesyuarat ni pula, kerana ini keputusan yang telah dipersetujui dan direkodkan oleh Jabatan Orang Asli.
In reality, no officer, whether from the Department of Orang Asli Affairs, the district office, or any other government agency had ever been to the Chewong settlement prior to this, let alone ask them for their consent.
Pihak kerajaan macam JW atau pejabat daerah ada masuk sini?
Tak masuk dia. Tak pernah masuk.
JBIC is aware of this, and yet JBIC chooses to stick to the government's version of events. But the current Chewong settlement, like that of the Temuans, need not be resettled, because the project will not inundate their lands. With the height of the dam now being reduced from 90 meters to 84 meters above sea level, the Temuan settlement is now at least 16 meters above the so-called danger level. The Temuan village also shares the same altitude as that of the nearby township of Lembah Felda Klau, which, curiously, will not be resettled. And, if the Temuan village will not be inundated, it is hard to imagine how anyone can think that the Chewong settlement high on Bukit Ternau will be affected. So why were the Orang Asli not given the promised right to choose either to stay or to move? We think there are other reasons for the forced relocation.